Hey y'all, it's your girl back at it again, and guess what I'm doing today? I am complaining.
Alright, welcome to a review of episode 6 of Loki 2021. I can't say I'm happy with this episode or this series as a whole, and we're going to get into why I didn't like it, why I wasn't a fan, and why I wasn't a fan of this episode in particular. And it made me angry enough to put up a video on my channel, even though I haven't put up any videos like this before. So, let's get into it. First, we start with a recap of what happened in the previous episodes. To give you a brief summary, Loki and the female version of Loki, Sylvie, are at this building in the end of time where they believe all the questions will be answered about the TVA sacred timeline, everything that the whole series has been about. And also, it's a chance for the audience as well to discover the truth. So, first things first, we get the the Marvel logo here with all the characters, except this time we can hear their voices, which transitions into this scene where it has sort of all this stuff in the timeline, and we can hear the voices of various people from history. It's very visually impressive, as you can see here. I do really like this picture. One small problem I have with this scene is I felt the voices they chose from history were somewhat arbitrary. But it's a relatively minor complaint compared to the rest of the episode. So let's move on. So we see they're here. They're getting ready to go in. One thing I wanted to bring up about Loki, I'm not really going to complain about his characterization much in this episode. I just wanted to point out, I thought he was totally different from his other iterations in the MCU. And I know this is a Loki who's had a different sort of character arc compared to the MCU character, but I think he's almost a totally different character, almost unrecognizable from the way he was before. Let me just show you what I mean. So, he's in a very tough situation here. And a normal person might look like this, timid, worried. Sylvie, of course, is confident, but I believe Loki would too, and here's my evidence for that. You can see in these screenshots, which I've taken from some of the MCU movies, Loki is in this situation where he's in danger. He's in a situation that's either he's physically in danger or there's a lot of stress going on, but he's almost always confident and composed. Here he's beaten, even in defeat, he's cracking jokes. He doesn't really look afraid. He's a little worried, but he's mostly composed. You can see here, in front of Odin, who's threatening to kill him, he's composed. He's still cracking jokes. You can see here, obviously he's sort of feinting the Avengers here, but he isn't timid or worried. He's backing off, but he's got a very serious look on his face. You can see in all these scenes, very confident, composed. And one thing I think the show really missed is there's an element of him that's very scary. His charisma isn't just looking nice and having a sharp tongue. He's also a bit of a scary character as well. Obviously, he loses a bit of that in the later movies, but he's still a very physically intimidating character. So I just wanted to point that out, get that out of the way, and I won't complain about his characterization for the rest of the episode. So let's move on. We see them in front of the sort of mansion or building they're about to go in. They talk with each other for a little bit. They're a bit apprehensive, but the door opens on their own. We see them meet with Miss Minutes. She offers them a chance to go back to the timeline. Loki gets everything he ever wanted. So does Sylvie. I'm not entirely sure why they didn't take this, although I can sort of understand it. I'm not saying it's out of character. I just think it's kind of interesting. Instead of getting everything they wanted, they decide to find out the truth and sort of exact revenge on this person in a way. At least that's Sylvie's goal. I'm not sure if that was in Loki's plans. And they've decided that the truth is sort of more important than their personal gain. So I just thought that was an interesting choice. And obviously that had to happen for narrative purposes. You couldn't just end it on them going to their perfect lives. But, it says something interesting about the characters. They decide to reject her offer, and she basically just disappears, which is also very interesting. Not even really threatening them, not even trying to get them to accept the offer, and we're soon going to see why. So, continue going through. We see them entering here. Okay, so this friendly I think he's called He Who Remains. An alternate version of Kang the Conqueror, or you could say the original version. He's here. He's friendly. He's talking to them. He's like, go up with me. He has sort of a very flamboyant attitude to him. They try to kill him. He, of course, disappears. And he says, okay, let's sit down and talk. They're ready for combat, but he doesn't really want to fight them. He just wants to talk to them, as you can see here. I don't really have a problem with this actor. I thought he did a fairly good job. He presented the information well, and although I don't have a particular attachment to him, I thought he did well enough in the role here, and was charismatic enough to make his explanations interesting, which we're about to get into. However, before that, let's snap back to the TVA. Alright, so moving on, we go to this part, where we go back to the judge and Mobius having a conversation. Mobius essentially is expressing doubts about following this plan as mentioned previously, and he's basically saying, yo, we can't take away people's free will. However, she remains loyal to the TVA even in spite of this. And this is one of my favorite parts of the episode, and she became, in I guess one scene, one of my favorite characters of the series. Because despite hearing all this stuff that sort of breaks the narrative about the TVA, she still chooses to remain loyal to the TVA. And I really like that because I really love characters that stick with their scruples even when things get tough. I know that's kind of maybe a personal thing, but I really like that at least one character here was really sticking to what they believed in and had sort of loyalty in something greater than themselves. So that was just a personal something I liked about the episode, one of the only parts I liked about the episode. And as you can see here, Mobius tries to stop her. They fight for a bit. She wins, takes the stick from him. You can see he's on the ground here. And she leaves, saying she's going to find free will. Now, what I thought was really interesting about this, actually, we'll wait to the end of the episode to really explain what I thought was interesting about this. Let's keep going. They continue talking to Kang. Kang keeps explaining things. And he basically explains that he's going to offer these two Lokis a choice. They can either kill him, which will split the multiverse again, cause another war. He'll come out on top again, and it'll essentially lead to the same situation where the TVA is created. Or they can choose to take his place and rule over the timelines as a benevolent ruler. Interesting. So let's keep going here. They're listening carefully. He's explaining. Alright, now let's try to find where it gets interesting. Now, what happens is Sylvie is absolutely resolute on killing him. Loki is like, wait a minute, let's consider this. Because in previous episodes we've established that he's in love with her and wants to stay with her. If they just branch out the multiverse, they might not get to stay together. He's like, let's consider this, maybe we can rule over the multiverse together, or at least just consider the possibility instead of having an emotional reaction. They start fighting. I thought this fight was okay. The choreography wasn't amazing, but it wasn't terrible either. Alright, so what happens is they go in. Loki essentially surrenders to her. She goes in for a kiss. They kiss for a bit, and it's very sentimental. However, Sylvie decides that the love is not worth sacrificing her revenge. So what she does is she kicks him through the time portal, essentially landing him back in the TVA. So now she has a chance, without his interference, to kill. Of course, you can see he's kind of distraught here. She has a chance to kill Kang here. So she goes up. He's ready to die. He's already said that he pretty much wants to die. He's tired of living for eternity. And she kills him. Getting her revenge. Now, here, she starts crying. I'm pretty disappointed with this scene. Now, you might be like, well, you like characters sticking to their scruples. I also like revenge plots. That's interesting. And she just decided, hey, screw everything else, I'm going to kill this guy. that does sound like a lot of scruples, a cool revenge plot, sticking to your convictions. Now, I do like that. Now, one thing I don't like is how she starts crying at the end. It's basically, she's remorseful after killing this guy. I have to ask, why? Now, I understand why she's doing it in character. She's like this sort of broken character. She's sacrificed everything to get this revenge. She's sort of done this on it as an emotional response rather than really thinking about this. Now, the problem is, I don't really like this. It shows instead of conviction, she sort of emotionally got it to do this, and she can't even celebrate after she's succeeded. Now, you might be like, well, revenge never feels good. Well, that's not really true. There's a lot of people out there who do enjoy revenge. So I think that's sort of a movie trope that revenge can never be enjoyable. I just wanted to see like I said before, a character with some convictions, at least have some joy in succeeding and sort of believing that what you did was right. But instead, it just seems like this emotional response. And it really disappointed me in Sylvie in a character, especially since there's not been much else in this series that's endeared me to this character. So it's just, I don't know. I was disappointed, very disappointed. Let's move on. We got these symbols, which sort of implies that it's just a cycle that's going to continue again as the multiverse cracks. You can see it's going into all these variant timelines. Why this happened so quickly, no freaking idea, but let's try it. You can see variant timelines splitting. Mobius and B15 or whatever are watching it. Very nice. We're very close to the end of the episode here. We see Loki. He's distraught. Oh my gosh. But he decides, he's got to get up. And yeah, he's basically just lost the love of his life. Doesn't know if he's going to see her again. Alright, fine. He decides to go through. He's going through. The TVA agents are freaking out because the timeline is splitting all over the place. What the heck? He meets Mobius and B15. Now the big reveal here is they don't know who he is. And why is that? Why don't they know who he is? It's because the whole TVA is different. And you can see instead of the timekeepers here, it's got Kang the Conqueror, which is a variant of the person we just saw who would rule the timeline with fear rather than benevolence. Or at least benevolently taking away people's free will, that is. Now, let's get into why I did not like this episode. It basically confirms that the MCU is predetermined. Of course, it said that in the first episode, but this episode really confirmed it. Now, I don't like predeterminism because it essentially means, if I need to explain it, essentially means all the choices we've seen characters make in the previous movies don't matter. It wasn't a 1 in however million chance that they were going to beat Thanos. It was, they were going to beat Thanos because it's predetermined. Their choices essentially didn't matter much because they didn't really have a choice to begin with. Okay. I already mentioned the variance thing. I don't think all the TVA agents would be immediately convinced that them being variants invalidates their role for the TVA, and I really liked how the judge stuck to her scruples. Now, let's get into the biggest issue with this episode. The biggest issue is this final scene. Why is this an issue? Now, the thing is, we have to ask, Kang the Conqueror is here, and we see the TVA, we see an alternate version of Kang here. Now, the thing is, this TVA is freaking out because now there's all these branches in the timeline. Now, the problem is, the branches they would have known that a multiverse existed and they couldn't stop it to begin with, because as soon as this other guy was killed, this other guy would be killed before this guy took over, because him being killed allowed this other Kang to come in, fill the vacuum, and build the new TVA. So they would either already know that a multiverse existed, or they would already be pruning timelines, and then this whole thing where multiverses start splitting out in this monitor we saw earlier, let's see if we can find that, here, wouldn't happen. So, this split would happen right at the same time that the other Kang took over, and therefore they would already know about this, so this wouldn't be some huge revelation in the TVA. So basically, it doesn't make any sense, and I can't think of any way it would make sense. I don't know if that makes sense to the viewers, but I'm trying to think of a way that they could have a single timeline here. Like, okay, so this new Kang takes over. What is his purpose? If there's already all these timelines and that's what created him and created the TVA, what is his purpose? And if it's to create one timeline, then how come all these timelines split? And you could say, oh, it's because this guy died. Well, this guy died before this other guy took over. So when he took over, he should have either known there were other timelines or been able to get rid of them. So it doesn't really make sense. And of course, there's the question of why don't any of these people remember Loki? If this is a different TVA, then how did Sylvie send him back to this one? I still haven't seen a satisfying explanation or been able to come up with a satisfying explanation. So basically, this doesn't seem to make sense. Of course, they imply we'll see the answer in Season 2. I just can't think of how they could explain it in a way that makes sense. So those are my main issues with the Episode 6 and kind of the series as a whole. And the series really, really disappointed me because I love Loki as a character. And I said I wouldn't rant too much about his characterization, but man, this is definitely not the Loki I was looking for. I mean, you see Loki here at the end. We got this sort of worried and distraught Loki. And yeah, we've seen him like that once in the MCU before, but he quickly came back from it, was able to get himself back together. That's the kind of Loki I want to see instead of this Loki here. I mean, all the characters around him seem more composed than he does when he's supposed to be this quick-witted, scheming character. And it just disappoints me. So, I mean, I can't really say anything else without retreading old ground. So, yeah, that's my review of Loki 2021, Episode 6. I'm just disappointed, guys. I don't know. Maybe other people are as well. Maybe they can share their experience in the comments. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed, at least got something out of this. Maybe confirmed some opinions you already had or saw a new perspective. And maybe I'll see you in another video.